Evolution has always been nature's most ambitious architect, but sometimes it gets carried away. Sometimes it builds creatures so massive, so improbable, that they seem like fabrications, geological pranks played on paleontologists who dare to piece together the impossible. The Titanoboa is one of those pranks, except it's real. Picture a snake longer than a school bus, heavier than a grand piano, thick enough around the middle that a grown man couldn't wrap his arms around it. Now picture that snake hunting in steaming tropical rivers 60 million years ago, coiling around prey with enough force to crush a crocodile's spine. This wasn't a mythical serpent from ancient legends. This was Titanoboa cerrejonensis, the largest snake ever to exist on Earth, a reptilian titan that ruled the jungles of prehistoric South America when the world was still recovering from the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. Its discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The fossils were so enormous that researchers initially thought they belonged to a crocodile. When the truth emerged, it rewrote everything we thought we knew about the limits of snake evolution, the temperatures of ancient climates, and the savage ecosystems that flourished after the age of dinosaurs ended. Titanoboa wasn't just big, it was a biological revolution wrapped in scales. This is the story of the snake that shouldn't exist, the jungle that made it possible, and the scientists who unearthed one of the most stunning fossil discoveries of the 21st century. The coal mine that held a monster. The story begins not in a jungle, but in a pit. The Cerrejón coal mine in northern Colombia is one of the largest open-pit mines in the world, a vast industrial scar carved into the earth where ancient forests once stood. Miners blasting through rock layers weren't looking for prehistoric monsters. They were after coal, the compressed remains of plants that grew millions of years ago. But in 2002, a Colombian student visiting the mine spotted something strange embedded in the rubble, a massive vertebra, far too large to belong to any modern animal. The bone sat in a drawer for several years before researchers at the University of Florida examined it closely. What they found was extraordinary. The vertebra was from a snake, but its size defied belief. Modern anacondas, the heaviest snakes alive today, have vertebrae about the size of a large coin. This fossil was the size of a grapefruit. If the proportions held true across the entire spine, the snake would have been impossibly large, something no one had ever documented in the fossil record. Paleontologists returned to Cerrejón with renewed urgency. Over the next few years, they unearthed more than 30 individual Titanoboa fossils, including vertebrae, ribs, and partial skulls. The bones came from a rock layer known as the Cerrejón Formation, which dates to the Paleocene epoch, roughly 60 million years ago. This was just 5 million years after the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs, a time when the planet was still finding its footing in a post-dinosaur world. The fossils told a remarkable story. Titanoboa wasn't just slightly larger than modern snakes, it was a biological extreme. The most complete specimen measured approximately 13 meters long and weighed over 1,000 kilograms. For comparison, the largest anaconda ever reliably measured was less than 6 meters. Titanoboa was more than twice as long and several times heavier. It was, by every measure, the apex predator of its ecosystem, a serpent so massive it had no natural enemies. But the discovery raised an immediate question: how could a snake grow so large? Modern snakes are limited by their metabolism, their environment, and the availability of prey. Titanoboa seemed to break every rule. To understand how it existed, scientists had to reconstruct the world it lived in, a world that turned out to be far stranger than anyone expected. A jungle without dinosaurs. When the asteroid struck Earth 66 million years ago, it didn't just kill the dinosaurs, it reset the entire planet. Forests burned, sunlight dimmed, and temperatures plummeted. For years, ecosystems collapsed under the weight of extinction. But life is resilient, and in the aftermath, new opportunities emerged. The Paleocene epoch became a testing ground for evolution. a time when survivors experimented with body plans and lifestyles that would have been impossible in a dinosaur-dominated world. South America, isolated from other continents by rising seas, became a laboratory for evolutionary experimentation. The landmass that would one day become Colombia was covered in dense tropical rainforest, fed by rivers that snaked through lowland swamps. The climate was hot, much hotter than today. Average temperatures hovered around 30 to 34 degrees Celsius, creating a greenhouse world where reptiles thrived. Without dinosaurs to compete with, reptiles grew larger, bolder, and more diverse. Titanoboa emerged in this world, perfectly adapted to the sweltering heat. Modern snakes are ectothermic, meaning they rely on external temperatures to regulate their metabolism. In cold climates, snakes grow slowly and remain small, but in the superheated jungles of the Paleocene, metabolic rates skyrocketed. Titanoboa could grow continuously, fueled by abundant prey and ideal temperatures. The hotter the environment, the larger a snake can become, and the Cerrejón rainforest was a furnace. The fossil evidence from Cerrejón paints a vivid picture of this lost ecosystem. Alongside Titanoboa, paleontologists found the remains of giant turtles, enormous crocodilians, and lungfish the size of small cars. The rivers teemed with life, creating a food web dense enough to support a predator as massive as Titanoboa. This wasn't a world of scarcity, it was a world of excess, where energy flowed freely and gigantism became the norm. The forests themselves were unlike anything alive today. Fossilized pollen and plant remains show a landscape dominated by palms, ferns, and broadleaf trees. The canopy would have been thick, filtering sunlight into dappled green shadows. The rivers were slow-moving and warm, perfect habitat for a semi-aquatic predator. Titanoboa likely spent much of its time in the water, using buoyancy to support its immense weight, while hunting along riverbanks and shallow pools. But this jungle was also a proving ground. Predators competed fiercely, and only the largest, strongest, and most efficient survived. Titanoboa didn't just exist in this world, it dominated it. Its size alone made it untouchable, a serpent so powerful that even the largest crocodiles would have thought twice before challenging it. The anatomy of a titan. Reconstructing Titanoboa required more than just measuring bones. It demanded an understanding of how such a massive animal could function. Every aspect of its anatomy pushed the limits of what a snake's body can achieve. The vertebrae alone revealed engineering marvels, each bone designed to support incredible weight while maintaining flexibility. Unlike mammals, which have rigid spines, snakes rely on hundreds of interlocking vertebrae that allow for fluid, sinuous movement. Titanoboa had more than 250 vertebrae, each one thick and robust, forming a muscular column capable of generating crushing force. The skull fragments discovered at Cerrejón provided additional clues. Titanoboa's head was massive, with jaws built to open wide enough to engulf prey the size of a modern alligator. The teeth were recurved, angled backward to prevent escape once the snake clamped down. Unlike venomous snakes, Titanoboa wasn't a biter, it was a constrictor. It killed by wrapping its body around prey and squeezing, collapsing the victim's circulatory system until the heart stopped. The sheer size of its coils meant it could overpower almost anything. The body itself was a marvel of muscular design. Modern boas and anacondas rely on powerful muscles arranged in overlapping layers, creating bands of force that tighten with each breath the prey takes. Titanoboa's muscles would have been proportionally stronger, capable of generating pressures that could snap bones and rupture organs. Fossil evidence shows thickened rib attachments, suggesting the muscles that powered construction were extraordinarily developed. This wasn't just a large snake, it was a perfectly optimized killing machine. Its skin likely bore scales similar to modern boas, providing both protection and flexibility. The coloration remains unknown, but paleontologists speculate it may have been dark green or brown, ideal for blending into murky river water. Camouflage would have been essential for ambush hunting, allowing Titanoboa to remain motionless until prey ventured too close. Once it struck, there was no escape. One of the most fascinating aspects of Titanoboa's anatomy is its cardiovascular system. Moving blood through a 13-metre body requires immense pressure, especially for an animal that spends time both in water and on land. Modern anacondas have powerful hearts positioned near the front of the body, but Titanoboa's heart would have been proportionally larger, pumping with enough force to circulate blood from head to tail. This physiological challenge may have limited how long Titanoboa could remain active, requiring it to rest frequently between hunts. The respiratory system posed similar challenges. Snakes breathe using a single functional lung that runs much of their body length. Titanoboa's lungs would have been enormous, capable of holding several litres of air. This would have allowed it to remain submerged for extended periods, lying in wait beneath the surface like a living trap. When it surfaced to breathe, the exhalation alone would have created ripples across the water. Another critical adaptation was its thermal regulation. As an ectotherm, Titanoboa depended entirely on environmental heat. The Paleocene climate provided ideal conditions, but even in a tropical jungle, temperatures fluctuated. Titanoboa likely basked in sunlit clearings or shallow water during cooler mornings, absorbing heat before hunting. Its massive body acted as a thermal battery, retaining warmth far longer than smaller reptiles. This gave it an advantage during cooler periods, allowing it to remain active while other predators slowed down. The sheer weight of Titanoboa presented unique challenges. On land, moving such a heavy body would have been slow and energy-intensive. The snake likely avoided extended terrestrial travel, preferring to stay near water where buoyancy reduced the burden. Its muscular body could undulate powerfully through water, propelling it forward with surprising speed. Fossilized riverbanks at Cerrejón show drag marks consistent with large reptiles hauling themselves ashore, possibly evidence of Titanoboa coming onto land to digest meals or bask. Every element of Titanoboa's design points to an animal that evolved not by accident, but through precise environmental pressures. The heat, the prey, the habitat, all of it aligned to create the perfect conditions for a giant constrictor. And for millions of years, it thrived. What did Titanoboa hunt? A predator the size of Titanoboa couldn't survive on small prey. It needed substantial meals, and the Cerrejón ecosystem provided them in abundance. Fossil evidence from the same rock layers reveals a cast of potential victims, each one large enough to sustain a giant snake. Chief among them were crocodilians, massive, armor-plated reptiles that ruled the rivers alongside Titanoboa. Some of these ancient crocodiles reached 5 meters in length, with powerful jaws and thick, muscular tails. They were apex predators in their own right, but even they weren't safe from Titanoboa. Bite marks on fossilized crocodile bones suggest violent encounters. Some bones show puncture wounds consistent with constriction injuries, where ribs were crushed inward by immense pressure. Titanoboa likely ambushed crocodiles at the water's edge, striking from below and coiling before the victim could react. Once wrapped, the crocodile's armor became a liability. Its rigid plates prevented the chest from expanding, accelerating suffocation. Within minutes, the struggle would end, and Titanoboa would begin the slow process of swallowing its prey whole. Turtles also featured prominently in Titanoboa's diet. The Cerrejón Formation contains fossils of massive freshwater turtles, some with shells exceeding 1 meter in diameter. These heavily armored reptiles would have been difficult prey for most predators, but Titanoboa had a solution. It simply crushed them. Constriction force applied to a turtle's shell could crack the protective plates, exposing the soft tissue inside. Some turtle fossils from Cerrejón show fracture patterns consistent with this type of damage, suggesting they fell victim to constrictor attacks. Fish were plentiful as well, though they likely served as supplementary food rather than primary meals. The rivers hosted lungfish, primitive relatives of modern species, some reaching lengths of 2 meters. These slow-moving, air-breathing fish would have been easy targets for a snake that could lie motionless on the riverbed, waiting for prey to swim within striking range. Titanoboa's jaws could open wide enough to engulf a lungfish in a single gulp, swallowing it headfirst to avoid the thick scales catching on the way down. Mammals existed in the Paleocene, but they were small and relatively rare compared to reptiles. Early ungulates, distant ancestors of modern hoofed animals, wandered the forest edges. Titanoboa may have occasionally taken these creatures if the opportunity arose, but its primary focus remained on aquatic and semi-aquatic prey. The energy expenditure required to hunt on land simply wasn't worth it for an animal so dependent on water. Birds, too, were present in limited numbers. The Paleocene skies were home to early relatives of modern waterfowl and wading birds, which would have frequented the riverbanks where Titanoboa hunted. A large bird caught drinking at the water's edge would have been an easy meal, seized in a sudden lunge and dragged beneath the surface before it could take flight. The frequency of Titanoboa's feeding remains a subject of scientific debate. Modern large constrictors, like anacondas, can go weeks or even months between meals, digesting slowly while conserving energy. Titanoboa likely followed a similar pattern, consuming massive prey and then retreating to a secluded spot to digest. The digestive process for an animal this size would have been slow and laborious, requiring weeks to break down a crocodile or large turtle. During this time, Titanoboa would have been vulnerable and lethargic, unable to hunt or defend itself effectively. Fossilized coprolites, preserved feces from the Cerrejon site, provide additional clues. Analysis reveals fragments of bone, scales and shell, confirming that Titanoboa consumed a varied diet of large, armoured prey. The presence of digested crocodile osteoderms, bony plates embedded in the skin, is particularly telling, as these structures are highly resistant to stomach acid and take considerable time to break down. Hunting strategy likely varied depending on prey type. For crocodiles, ambush from below was ideal. Titanoboa could remain submerged for extended periods, using its nostrils positioned on top of its head to breathe while staying hidden. For turtles, a slower approach worked better, allowing the snake to coil around the shell and apply pressure gradually until the armor cracked. Fish could be hunted opportunistically, requiring little energy or strategy. Competition with other predators would have been minimal. No other animal in the Cerrejon ecosystem matched Titanoboa's size or strength. Crocodiles were formidable, but even the largest would have thought twice before challenging a 13-metre constrictor. The snake's sheer mass gave it an overwhelming advantage in any confrontation, making it effectively invincible in its prime. The science of size. The discovery of Titanoboa forced scientists to reconsider fundamental assumptions about reptilian biology. How large can a snake grow? What environmental factors determine maximum size? And what does Titanoboa's existence tell us about the climate of the Paleocene? These questions led to groundbreaking research that reshaped our understanding of ancient ecosystems. Body size in snakes is directly tied to temperature. Ectothermic animals depend on external heat to fuel metabolism, and warmer environments allow for faster growth and larger adult sizes. Modern anacondas live in tropical regions where temperatures average around 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. Titanoboa lived in an environment at least 5 degrees hotter, and this seemingly small difference had profound effects. By analysing the relationship between vertebrae size and body mass in modern snakes, researchers developed equations to estimate Titanoboa's temperature requirements. The results were striking. For Titanoboa to reach its documented size, average temperatures in the Cerrejon region would have needed to remain between 30 and 34 degrees Celsius year-round. This was significantly warmer than previous climate models suggested. The discovery of Titanoboa became a paleoclimate indicator, providing direct evidence that the Paleocene was hotter than many scientists had believed. It also suggested that carbon dioxide levels were much higher during this period, creating a greenhouse effect that superheated the planet. But temperature alone doesn't explain everything. Prey availability plays a crucial role in determining predator size. An ecosystem must produce enough biomass to support large predators, and the Sarajevo rainforest was exceptionally productive. The combination of heat, humidity, and abundant plant life created a food web dense enough to sustain not just Titanoboa, but also giant crocodiles, massive turtles, and oversized fish. Every link in the chain contributed to the snake's ability to grow to record-breaking proportions. Another factor involves metabolic efficiency. Larger animals require less food per unit of body mass than smaller animals, a principle known as Kleiber's law. Titanoboa's size gave it a metabolic advantage. It could survive on fewer meals relative to its weight than smaller snakes. This efficiency allowed it to thrive even during seasonal fluctuations in prey availability. When food was scarce, Titanoboa could simply wait, burning through its energy reserves slowly until hunting conditions improved. The fossil record also reveals interesting patterns in Titanoboa's growth. Juvenile specimens found at Sarajevo show that young snakes grew rapidly during their first few years, then slowed as they approached adult size. This growth pattern mirrors that of modern constrictors, which experience a burst of growth during adolescence before plateauing. For Titanoboa, reaching full size likely took decades, possibly as long as 30 to 40 years. Once mature, the snake would have been effectively invulnerable, living for many more years as the undisputed king of its domain. Biomechanical modelling provides further insights into size limits. As snakes grow larger, their bodies face increasing structural challenges. The heart must pump harder to circulate blood, the lungs must expand further to oxygenate tissue, and the muscles must generate more force to move the body. At some point, these demands become unsustainable and growth stops. Titanoboa appears to have pushed close to this theoretical limit. Any larger, and its cardiovascular system would have struggled to function efficiently. Interestingly, modern snakes show a clear upper size limit even in ideal conditions. Reticulated pythons and anacondas rarely exceed 7 meters, regardless of food availability or climate. This suggests that Titanoboa's size wasn't just a matter of having more resources, it was also a consequence of living in a unique evolutionary moment. The Paleocene offered a brief window when conditions aligned perfectly: high temperatures, abundant prey, minimal competition, and an ecosystem still recovering from mass extinction. Titanoboa exploited that window to its fullest. Some researchers have speculated about whether snakes could ever grow as large as Titanoboa again. The answer is almost certainly no. Modern climates are cooler, ecosystems are more competitive, and prey animals have evolved better defences. Even if temperatures were to rise dramatically due to climate change, the food webs necessary to support a giant constrictor no longer exist. Titanoboa was a product of its time, a singular evolutionary experiment that cannot be repeated. The snake's size also raises questions about oxygen levels. Some studies suggest that atmospheric oxygen concentrations during the Paleocene were slightly higher than today, which could have supported larger ectothermic animals. While this remains speculative, it adds another layer to the puzzle of how Titanoboa achieved its incredible dimensions. The Sarajevo Formation. Fossils of Titanoboa didn't emerge from just any ancient landscape. They came from one of the richest paleontological sites in South America. The Sarajevo Formation is a geological treasure trove, preserving a snapshot of life 60 million years ago with remarkable clarity. Understanding this site is essential to understanding Titanoboa because the snake didn't exist in isolation. It was part of a complex, interconnected ecosystem that left behind a fossil record unlike any other from the Paleocene. The Sarajevo coal deposits formed from ancient peat swamps, environments where dead plant material accumulated faster than it could decay. Over millions of years, layers of vegetation were compressed and transformed into coal. But between these layers lie thin bands of mudstone and sandstone that contain fossils. These sedimentary layers capture moments in time, floods that bury animals quickly, preserving bones, shells, and even delicate tissues before scavengers or bacteria could destroy them. What makes Cerrejón exceptional is the diversity of fossils found there. In addition to Titanoboa, paleontologists have unearthed the remains of at least 7 species of turtles, 5 types of crocodilians, multiple fish species, and numerous plant fossils. This diversity paints a picture of a thriving, dynamic ecosystem where life flourished in nearly every niche. The presence of so many large predators suggests that prey was abundant enough to support multiple competing species, each adapted to slightly different hunting strategies. The turtles of Cerrejón were unlike any alive today. Some had shells exceeding 1 meter in diameter, with thick, domed carapaces designed to withstand attacks from powerful predators. Others had flatter shells suited for life in shallow water, where they likely fed on aquatic vegetation. The variety of turtle species indicates that the rivers and swamps of Cerrejón offered multiple habitats, from deep, slow-moving channels to sunlit shallows rich with plant life. Crocodilians were equally diverse. Fossils include both fish-eating specialists with narrow, toothy snouts and broad-headed generalists capable of tackling larger prey. One species, Acherontissuchus, reached lengths of nearly 5 meters and had a skull built for crushing. These crocodiles competed directly with Titanoboa for food, and conflicts between the two apex predators were likely common. Fossil evidence of healed bite wounds on crocodile bones suggests that some survived encounters with Titanoboa, though many did not. The fish fauna included lungfish, which still exist today but in much smaller forms. Paleocene lungfish grew to impressive sizes, with some individuals reaching 2 meters in length. These air-breathing fish inhabited oxygen-poor swamps where other fish couldn't survive, giving them access to food sources unavailable to competitors. Their thick scales and powerful bodies made them challenging prey, but Titanoboa's size and strength made even lungfish vulnerable. Plant fossils from Cerrejón reveal a landscape dominated by tropical rainforest species. Fossilized pollen grains indicate the presence of palms, legumes, and early relatives of modern rainforest trees. Leaf fossils show a variety of shapes and sizes, suggesting a multi-layered canopy with emergent trees towering above a dense understory. The climate supported continuous plant growth year-round, producing the massive amounts of biomass needed to sustain large herbivores, which in turn fed the carnivores. The geology of the site also provides clues about ancient river systems. Sandstone layers interbedded with coal suggest that rivers periodically flooded, depositing sediment across the landscape. These floods would have created temporary lakes and ponds, concentrating prey animals in smaller areas and making hunting easier for predators like Titanoboa. Seasonal flooding may have played a crucial role in regulating the ecosystem, preventing any single species from becoming too dominant. One of the most intriguing discoveries at Cerrejón is the presence of fossilized burrows. These U-shaped tunnels preserved in mudstone were likely created by lungfish during dry seasons. When water levels dropped, lungfish would burrow into mud and enter a state of dormancy, waiting for rains to return. Titanoboa may have exploited these burrows, digging up dormant fish during times when active prey was scarce. The preservation quality at Cerrejón is exceptional. Some fossils retain fine details like skin texture, scale patterns, and even stomach contents. This level of preservation is rare and provides paleontologists with unprecedented insights into ancient life. In Titanoboa's case, the well-preserved vertebrae allowed researchers to make accurate size estimates and reconstruct its lifestyle with confidence. Mining operations at Cerrejón have been both a blessing and a curse for paleontology. On one hand, the mining exposes vast amounts of fossil-bearing rock that would otherwise remain buried. On the other, the pace of extraction means that many fossils are destroyed before scientists can study them. Paleontologists work closely with mining companies to salvage fossils whenever possible, but it's a race against time. Every truckload of coal removed potentially contains irreplaceable pieces of prehistory. Despite these challenges, Cerrejón continues to yield new discoveries. Recent excavations have uncovered additional Titanoboa specimens, each one adding to our understanding of the species. There's hope that more complete skeletons will eventually be found, including a full skull, which would answer lingering questions about the snake's sensory capabilities and feeding mechanics. Titanoboa's place in snake evolution. Snakes are relative newcomers in the grand timeline of vertebrate evolution. While reptiles have existed for over 300 million years, snakes emerged much later, likely during the Cretaceous period around 100 million years ago. Their evolutionary history is still poorly understood, with significant gaps in the fossil record. Titanoboa helps fill one of those gaps, providing a rare glimpse into how snakes adapted and diversified in the aftermath of the dinosaur extinction. Modern snakes belong to several major groups, with boas and pythons representing some of the most primitive lineages. These constrictors retain features that hint at their evolutionary past, including vestigial hip bones, remnants of the limbs their ancestors once possessed. Titanoboa belongs to the boa family, making it a distant relative of modern boas like the boa constrictor and anaconda. Its fossils show clear anatomical similarities to these living species, confirming that the basic body plan of constrictors was already established by the Paleocene. However, Titanoboa also exhibits unique features not seen in modern boats. Its vertebrae are proportionally thicker and more robust, adaptations necessary to support its immense weight. The neural arches, bony projections that protect the spinal cord, are taller and more heavily reinforced, suggesting that Titanoboa experienced greater mechanical stress than any living snake. These differences indicate that while Titanoboa was related to modern boas, it represented a distinct lineage that evolved in response to the unique conditions of the Paleocene. The evolution of gigantism in snakes is a recurring theme. Throughout history, various snake lineages have produced oversized species, often in response to abundant prey and favorable climate. During the Miocene epoch, around 15 million years ago, giant pythons roamed Australia, some reaching lengths of 7 meters. In the Pleistocene, just a few million years ago, massive boas inhabited South America, preying on extinct megafauna like giant ground sloths. Titanoboa represents the most extreme example of this trend, but it's not an isolated case. Why do some snake lineages evolve toward gigantism while others remain small? The answer lies in ecological opportunity. Large size offers significant advantages: reduced predation risk, access to larger prey, and improved competitive ability. But it also comes with costs, higher energy requirements, slower reproductive rates, and increased vulnerability to environmental changes. For gigantism to evolve, the benefits must outweigh the costs, and that only happens under specific conditions. In Titanoboa's case, the conditions were ideal. The Paleocene climate provided the heat necessary for sustained metabolic activity. The ecosystem offered abundant prey without significant competition. And the absence of large mammalian predators, which wouldn't diversify for millions of years, removed one of the main threats to large reptiles. Titanoboa exploited these conditions fully, becoming a super predator that dominated its environment. The evolutionary success of Titanoboa raises questions about why giant snakes haven't evolved more recently. Modern ecosystems are full of large prey animals, and tropical climates still exist. Yet no snake today approaches Titanoboa's size. The answer likely involves a combination of factors. Mammalian predators now dominate most ecosystems, outcompeting reptiles for resources. Climates are cooler than during the Paleocene, reducing the metabolic advantages that once favored giant snakes. And modern prey species have evolved better defenses, making them harder to subdue. Another important factor is the evolutionary history of snakes themselves. Titanoboa emerged at a unique moment when snakes were still diversifying and experimenting with different body plans. By the time mammals rose to dominance, snakes had already settled into ecological roles that favoured smaller, more agile forms. Once a lineage becomes specialised, reversing course is difficult. Modern constrictors are well adapted to their current sizes, and evolving larger would require overcoming significant developmental and ecological hurdles. Titanoboa also provides insights into the origins of constriction. While constrictors are common today, their evolutionary history is murky. Did constriction evolve once or multiple times independently? Titanoboa's anatomy suggests that constriction was already a highly refined hunting strategy by the Paleocene. The thickened vertebrae, powerful rib attachments, and flexible spine all point to an animal that had perfected the mechanics of squeezing prey. This implies that constriction evolved earlier, possibly during the Cretaceous, and that Titanoboa inherited this ability from its ancestors. Genetic studies of modern snakes support this idea. Molecular data indicates that boas and pythons diverged from other snake lineages over 90 million years ago, long before Titanoboa existed. This means that the basic anatomy of constrictors, including the specialized muscles and flexible skeleton, was already in place when Titanoboa evolved. The snake simply scaled up an existing design, taking it to its logical extreme. One of the ongoing debates in snake evolution concerns the origin of their limbless body plan. How did snakes lose their legs? Two main hypotheses exist. The terrestrial hypothesis, which suggests snakes evolved from burrowing lizards, and the aquatic hypothesis, which argues that snakes evolved from marine reptiles. Titanoboa's semi-aquatic lifestyle lends support to the aquatic hypothesis, showing that snakes are well suited to life in water. However, the debate remains unresolved, with evidence supporting both scenarios. What's clear is that snakes are among the most successful reptiles alive today, with over 3,000 species occupying nearly every terrestrial habitat. Their elongated, limbless bodies allow them to exploit niches unavailable to other vertebrates, from tight burrows to dense vegetation. Titanoboa represents the pinnacle of one evolutionary path, the path of gigantism and aquatic predation. While that path eventually led to a dead end, it demonstrates the incredible adaptability and diversity of snake evolution. Climate clues locked in bone. Fossils are more than just remnants of ancient life. They're windows into past environments. Every bone, every shell, every fragment of preserved tissue carries information about the climate, ecology, and chemistry of the world it came from. Titanoboa's fossils are no exception. By analysing the snake's bones alongside other evidence from Cerrejón, scientists have reconstructed the climate of the Paleocene with unprecedented accuracy, revealing a world far hotter than our own. The key to unlocking this climate information lies in the relationship between body size and temperature in ectothermic animals. Because reptiles depend on external heat to regulate their metabolism, their maximum size is constrained by environmental temperatures. Colder climates limit growth, while warmer climates allow for larger body sizes. By measuring Titanoboa's vertebrae and comparing them to those of modern snakes, researchers calculated the minimum temperature required to support a snake of its size. The results were definitive. For Titanoboa to reach 13 meters in length, average temperatures in Cerrejón would have needed to remain between 30 and 34 degrees Celsius year-round. This was 5 to 9 degrees warmer than modern tropical rainforests. Such extreme heat would have made the Paleocene jungle nearly unbearable for humans. But for reptiles, it was paradise. This finding had profound implications for paleoclimatology. Prior to Titanoboa's discovery, most climate models estimated that Paleocene temperatures were only slightly warmer than today. The snake's size forced a re-evaluation of those models, leading scientists to revise upward their estimates of greenhouse gas concentrations during the period. Carbon dioxide levels may have been double or even triple modern levels, creating a runaway greenhouse effect that superheated the planet. But temperature wasn't the only climate variable recorded in Titanoboa's bones. Isotope analysis of fossils from Cerrejón reveals additional details about rainfall, seasonality, and atmospheric composition. Oxygen isotopes in turtle shells, for example, indicate that rainfall was abundant and consistent, with little seasonal variation. This suggests that the Cerrejón ecosystem experienced minimal dry seasons, maintaining lush vegetation year-round. Carbon isotopes tell a different story. Plant fossils from the site show a predominance of C3 photosynthesis, the same process used by modern rainforest trees. This indicates that carbon dioxide levels, while high, weren't extreme enough to favour C4 plants, which thrive in low CO2 environments. The balance of C3 and C4 plants provides a rough estimate of atmospheric CO2, helping scientists narrow down the concentration range. Another line of evidence comes from fossilised leaves. The size and shape of leaves are closely tied to temperature and humidity. Large, broad leaves with smooth edges indicate warm, wet conditions, while small, toothed leaves suggest cooler, drier climates. Cerrejón's leaf fossils are overwhelmingly large and smooth, consistent with a hot, humid rainforest environment. Some leaves show drip tips, elongated points that help shed water, a feature common in modern rainforests where heavy rainfall is frequent. Soil chemistry also provides clues. The coal deposits at Cerrejón form from peat, which develops in waterlogged environments where decomposition is slow. The presence of thick coal seams indicates that the region experienced sustained high water tables, likely due to heavy rainfall and poor drainage. This matches the picture painted by other evidence, a landscape saturated with water, where rivers meandered through swamps and marshes teeming with life. Climate modelling based on Titanoboa's size has implications beyond the Paleocene. Understanding how ecosystems respond to extreme heat helps scientists predict the effects of modern climate change. If the planet warms significantly over the coming centuries, will we see a resurgence of giant reptiles? Probably not. Modern ecosystems are too different, and mammals have already filled most ecological niches. But the Paleocene serves as a cautionary tale, showing that extreme warmth can trigger dramatic ecological shifts. The end of the giants. Titanoboa ruled the rivers of Cerrejón for several million years, but its reign didn't last forever. By the end of the Paleocene, around 55 million years ago, the giant snake had vanished from the fossil record. What caused its extinction? The answer involves a combination of cooling temperatures, changing ecosystems, and the rise of new competitors. The Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, PETM, marks a critical turning point in Earth's climate history. Around 56 million years ago, a sudden release of carbon into the atmosphere caused global temperatures to spike even higher than during the Paleocene. For a brief period, the planet became even hotter. So hot that tropical conditions extended to the poles. But this extreme heat didn't last. Within a few 100,000 years, temperatures began to drop as carbon was reabsorbed into the oceans and rocks. As the climate cooled, the conditions that allowed Titanoboa to thrive began to disappear. Lower temperatures slowed reptilian metabolism, making it harder for giant snakes to maintain their size. Prey populations may have declined as ecosystems adjusted to the changing climate, and new predators began to emerge, including early mammals that grew larger and more diverse as the Eocene progressed. Mammals had existed throughout the Paleocene, but they remained relatively small and unspecialized. Most were no larger than a dog, occupying ecological niches that didn't directly compete with large reptiles. However, as temperatures cooled and ecosystems shifted, mammals began to diversify rapidly. Carnivorous mammals, like creodonts and mesonychids, evolved powerful jaws and running adaptations, allowing them to hunt more effectively than their reptilian competitors. This mammalian radiation spelled trouble for Titanoboa. Mammals have a metabolic advantage over reptiles. They're endothermic, meaning they generate their own body heat. This allows them to remain active in cooler conditions, hunt at night, and maintain energy levels even when temperatures drop. As the climate cooled, mammals became increasingly dominant, outcompeting reptiles for resources and driving many species to extinction. The fossil record from the early Eocene shows a marked decline in large reptiles. Giant crocodilians, once common in Paleocene ecosystems, became rarer as mammalian predators took over. Turtles persisted, but their diversity decreased, and snakes, while still present, never again reached the sizes seen during the Paleocene. Titanoboa's extinction wasn't sudden. It was a gradual decline, driven by environmental changes that made its lifestyle unsustainable. Another factor may have been the changing geography of South America. During the Paleocene, the continent was isolated, surrounded by oceans that prevented the migration of species from other landmasses. This isolation allowed unique ecosystems to develop, free from outside competition. But by the Eocene, tectonic movements began to alter this isolation. Sea levels dropped, creating land bridges that allowed mammals from North America to migrate south. These new arrivals brought fresh competition, further stressing already declining reptile populations. The disappearance of Titanoboa also reflects broader patterns in reptile evolution. Throughout Earth's history, reptiles have experienced cycles of dominance and decline. During the Mesozoic, they ruled the planet, with dinosaurs, marine reptiles, and flying pterosaurs occupying nearly every niche. After the dinosaur extinction, reptiles rebounded briefly during the Paleocene, producing giants like Titanoboa. But as mammals rose to power, reptiles retreated into specialized roles, still successful, but no longer dominant. Modern constrictors are much smaller than Titanoboa, but they still thrive in tropical regions around the world. Anacondas, the largest snakes alive today, rarely exceed 6 meters in length, and they face competition from mammalian predators like jaguars and caimans. In a sense, modern constrictors are living in the shadow of Titanoboa, occupying a world where their size is constrained by cooler temperatures and greater competition. Could Titanoboa have survived if conditions had remained stable? Possibly, but unlikely. Evolution is relentless, and new competitors constantly emerge to challenge established species. Even if the climate hadn't cooled, the rise of mammals would have eventually pressured Titanoboa into decline. The snake's specialization, its dependence on high temperatures, abundant prey, and aquatic habitats made it vulnerable to any significant environmental change. The extinction of Titanoboa also highlights the fragility of extreme specialization. Species that evolve to exploit narrow ecological niches often thrive in the short term, but struggle when conditions change. Generalist species, those that can adapt to multiple environments and food sources, tend to be more resilient over long timescales. Titanoboa was a specialist, perfectly adapted to the hot, swampy world of the Paleocene. When that world disappeared, so did the snake. Reconstructing the monster. Building an accurate reconstruction of Titanoboa requires more than just assembling bones. It demands a deep understanding of anatomy, biomechanics, and ecology. Paleontologists face significant challenges when reconstructing extinct animals, especially those as unusual as Titanoboa. Missing skeletal elements, ambiguous fossil evidence, and the absence of modern analogues all complicate the process. Yet through careful analysis and comparison with living snakes, scientists have created remarkably detailed reconstructions of the giant serpent. The first step in reconstruction involves identifying which bones belong to Titanoboa and which belong to other species. The Cerrejon site contains fossils from multiple animals, often mixed together in the same rock layers. Distinguishing Titanoboa vertebrae from those of other snakes or reptiles requires detailed measurements and comparisons. Each vertebra has unique features, size, shape, articulation surfaces, that help paleontologists assign it to the correct species. Once the bones are identified, the next challenge is determining their position along the spine. Snakes have hundreds of vertebrae, and each one is slightly different depending on where it sits in the body. Vertebrae near the head are smaller and more delicate. while those in the midsection are larger and more robust. By comparing Titanoboa's fossils to the complete skeletons of modern boas, researchers can estimate where each bone belonged and how many vertebrae the entire animal possessed. Estimating body length is another complex task. The relationship between vertebrae size and total length varies among snake species, and Titanoboa's extreme size introduces additional uncertainty. Researchers use statistical models based on modern snakes, adjusting for the unique proportions suggested by Titanoboa's fossils. The resulting estimate, 13 meters, comes with a margin of error, and some scientists argue the snake could have been slightly smaller or larger. However, the consensus places Titanoboa at around 12 to 13 meters, making it the largest snake ever documented. Determining body mass is even more challenging. Weight estimates depend on assumptions about body shape, muscle mass, and fat content, none of which fossilize. By comparing Titanoboa's vertebrae to those of modern anacondas, researchers calculated that the prehistoric snake weighed between 1,000 and 1,300 kilograms. This enormous weight has implications for behavior, as it would have made terrestrial movement slow and energy-intensive. Reconstructing the skull presents unique difficulties because only partial skull fragments have been found. Without a complete skull, paleontologists rely on comparisons with related species to fill in the gaps. The fragments suggest a large, robust skull with powerful jaws and backward curving teeth. The shape and arrangement of bones indicate that Titanoboa's skull was more similar to modern boas than to pythons, supporting its classification within the boa family. Soft tissue reconstruction is largely speculative. Muscles, skin, and internal organs don't fossilize well, so scientists must infer their appearance from living analogues. Modern boas have powerful muscles arranged in overlapping layers, and Titanoboa likely had a similar arrangement, only much larger. The skin probably bore keeled scales similar to those of anacondas, providing both protection and flexibility. Coloration remains unknown, but a dark mottled pattern would have been ideal for camouflage in murky water. One interesting aspect of reconstruction involves biomechanical modelling. Using computer simulations, researchers can test whether Titanoboa's body could physically support its estimated size. These models account for factors like muscle strength, skeletal stress, and cardiovascular demands. The results confirm that Titanoboa's anatomy was feasible, just barely. The snake appears to have been operating near the upper limit of what's physically possible for a constrictor, constrained by the limits of bone strength and heart capacity. Another reconstruction challenge involves behavior. How did Titanoboa move? How fast could it swim? How long could it hold its breath? These questions can't be answered definitively, but comparisons with modern snakes provide clues. Large constrictors, like anacondas, are slow on land, but surprisingly agile in water, using undulating body movements to generate thrust. Titanoboa likely moved the same way, spending most of its time in rivers and swamps, where buoyancy reduced the burden of its massive weight. Reconstructing hunting behavior requires inference from multiple lines of evidence. The shape of the vertebrae suggests Titanoboa was capable of powerful constriction, while the tooth structure indicates it grabbed prey rather than delivering venomous bites. Fossilized prey remains from Cerrejon show that large crocodilians and turtles were available, and their bones bear marks consistent with constriction injuries. Putting these pieces together, scientists have developed a picture of Titanoboa as an ambush predator that seized prey with lightning speed, then crushed it into submission. The process of reconstruction is ongoing. As new fossils are discovered and analytical techniques improve, our understanding of Titanoboa continues to evolve. Recent advances in CT scanning allow researchers to examine fossils in unprecedented detail, revealing internal structures invisible to the naked eye. These scans may eventually uncover new information about Titanoboa's sensory organs, brain structure, or growth patterns. Legacy in the modern world. Titanoboa's discovery has resonated far beyond the halls of museums and scientific journals. The giant snake has captured public imagination, becoming a symbol of prehistoric wonder and reminder of how dramatically Earth's ecosystems have changed over time. Its legacy extends into multiple fields, from climate science to popular culture, shaping how we understand both the past and the future. In paleontology, Titanoboa stands as a landmark discovery. It fills a critical gap in the fossil record, providing insights into how life rebounded after the dinosaur extinction. The snake's size and anatomy have prompted re-evaluations of reptile physiology, inspiring new research into metabolic limits and environmental constraints. Every major paleontology textbook now includes Titanoboa as an example of Paleocene megafauna, ensuring that future generations of scientists will study its remains. Climate scientists have also embraced Titanoboa as a valuable data point. The snake's size provides a direct link between ancient temperatures and biological outcomes, offering a way to test and refine climate models. As researchers work to predict the effects of modern climate change, understanding past warm periods becomes increasingly important. Titanoboa's existence proves that extreme heat can support large ectothermic animals, suggesting that future warming could favour reptiles in unexpected ways. In popular culture, Titanoboa has become a monster icon. The snake has appeared in documentaries, books, television shows, and even video games. Its massive size and predatory lifestyle make it perfect fodder for dramatic reconstructions, and filmmakers have seized on its visual appeal. While these portrayals often exaggerate the snake's ferocity, they've succeeded in bringing Titanoboa to millions of people who might never have encountered it otherwise. Educational exhibits featuring Titanoboa have proven immensely popular. The Smithsonian Institution created a life-sized model of the snake, complete with detailed scales and realistic coloration. The exhibit toured major cities, drawing huge crowds and sparking widespread interest in paleontology. Children who see the model are often inspired to learn more about prehistoric life, potentially launching careers in science. The discovery has also had economic impacts. Tourism to the Ceredigion region has increased as visitors seek to see the site where Titanoboa was found. Local museums have developed exhibits highlighting the fossil discoveries, creating educational opportunities and boosting regional pride. The snake has become a symbol of Colombia's rich paleontological heritage, drawing international attention to a country often overlooked in discussions of fossil sites. For indigenous communities near Ceredigion, Titanoboa has taken on cultural significance. Local folklore includes stories of giant serpents, and some see the fossil discovery as validation of traditional narratives. While these stories don't necessarily reflect actual encounters with Titanoboa, the snake went extinct long before humans evolved. They demonstrate how scientific discoveries can intersect with cultural heritage in meaningful ways. The snake's name itself has become part of the scientific lexicon. Titanoboa combines Titan, referring to the giants of Greek mythology, with boa, the family of constrictors it belongs to. The species name, Cerejionensis, honours the Ceredigion formation where it was found. This naming convention follows standard paleontological practice, ensuring that the snake's identity is permanently linked to its discovery site. Titanoboa has also sparked philosophical discussions about extinction and impermanence. The snake dominated its ecosystem for millions of years, seemingly invincible. Yet it vanished, unable to adapt to changing conditions. This serves as a reminder that no species, no matter how successful, is guaranteed survival. In an era when humanity faces its own environmental challenges, Titanoboa's extinction carries a sobering message: adapt or perish. Educational programs have leveraged Titanoboa's appeal to teach broader lessons about evolution, ecology, and climate change. The snake provides a tangible example of how organisms respond to environmental pressures, making abstract concepts more accessible to students. Teachers use Titanoboa to illustrate principles like natural selection, ecological niches, and the interconnectedness of climate and biology. The ongoing study of Titanoboa continues to yield new insights. Researchers are currently investigating its growth rates, reproductive strategies, and potential social behaviours. Each finding adds another piece to the puzzle, bringing us closer to a complete understanding of this remarkable animal. As technology advances, techniques like DNA analysis or protein sequencing may eventually extract molecular information from the fossils, opening entirely new avenues of research. The fossil hunters. Behind every major fossil discovery lies a team of dedicated scientists, technicians, and enthusiasts who spend years searching, excavating, and analysing ancient remains. The story of Titanoboa is no exception. From the initial misidentified vertebra to the fully reconstructed skeleton displayed in museums, the journey involved dozens of people working across multiple continents. Their efforts transformed a few puzzling bones into one of paleontology's most significant finds of the 21st century. The discovery began almost by accident. In 2002, a Colombian undergraduate student named Fabiani Herrera was exploring the Cherellón coal mine as part of a university project focused on fossil plants. While examining exposed rock layers, he spotted a large, unusual bone embedded in mudstone. Recognizing that it didn't belong to any plant, Herrera carefully extracted it and brought it to his professors. The bone was identified as a vertebra, but its size was perplexing. It was far too large to belong to any modern snake, yet its shape was unmistakably serpentine. The vertebra sat in a collection drawer for several years while researchers debated its significance. Some suggested it belonged to a crocodile, while others thought it might be a deformed specimen. It wasn't until 2007 that the bone reached the hands of specialists capable of recognizing its true nature. Jonathan Block, a vertebrate paleontologist at the University of Florida, and Jason Head, a snake expert then at the University of Toronto, examined the fossil together. They immediately realized they were looking at something extraordinary, a snake vertebra of unprecedented size. Block and Head assembled a team to return to Cherellón and search for more fossils. The challenge was immense. The mine covered hundreds of square kilometres, and fossil-bearing layers were scattered throughout. Mining operations moved quickly, often removing and processing rock before paleontologists could examine it. The team had to work closely with mining company officials, negotiating access to excavation sites and racing against the schedule of coal extraction. Over the next several years, the team recovered dozens of Titanoboa fossils, including vertebrae, ribs, and skull fragments. Each fossil required careful extraction to prevent damage. Workers used small brushes, dental picks, and handheld drills to free bones from surrounding rock, a process that could take hours for a single specimen. Once extracted, fossils were wrapped in protective materials and transported to laboratories for cleaning and analysis. Analysing the fossils required collaboration among specialists from multiple disciplines. Herpetologists studied the vertebrae to determine species identity and estimate body size. Paleoclimatologists used the size data to calculate ancient temperatures. Biomechanics experts built computer models to test whether the snake's anatomy was physically feasible. This interdisciplinary approach ensured that the findings were robust and supported by multiple lines of evidence. Publishing the discovery was its own challenge. the team prepared a manuscript detailing their findings and submitted it to Nature, one of the world's most prestigious scientific journals. The peer review process was rigorous, with multiple experts scrutinizing the data, methodology, and conclusions. After several rounds of revisions, the paper was accepted and published in February 2009. The announcement made headlines worldwide, capturing public attention and generating enormous interest in the fossil. Media coverage transformed Titanoboa from a scientific curiosity into a cultural phenomenon. News outlets ran stories featuring dramatic headlines and reconstructed images of the giant snake. Television networks commissioned documentaries, bringing Titanoboa to living rooms across the globe. The Smithsonian Institution created a full-scale model which toured museums and science centres, allowing people to experience the snake's size firsthand. The attention brought both opportunities and challenges. Funding for further research became more readily available, allowing the team to expand their work. But the publicity also attracted skeptics who questioned the size estimates or criticised the reconstruction methods. The researchers responded by publishing additional papers, providing more detailed evidence and addressing concerns raised by critics. One of the most significant contributions came from Carlos Jaramillo, a Colombian paleobotanist who studied the plant fossils from Cerrejón. His work on fossilized pollen and leaves provided crucial climate data that supported the temperature estimates derived from Titanoboa's size. By combining evidence from multiple sources, snakes, plants, geology, the team built a comprehensive picture of the Paleocene ecosystem. The collaborative nature of the project extended beyond the initial discovery team. Scientists from Colombia, the United States, Canada, and Europe contributed expertise, ensuring that the research met the highest standards. This international collaboration exemplifies how modern paleontology operates, with researchers from different countries working together to solve complex scientific puzzles. As the study of Titanoboa continues, new researchers join the effort. Graduate students analyse previously unstudied fossils, applying cutting-edge techniques to extract additional information. Every new analysis brings the possibility of fresh insights, keeping the discovery alive and relevant years after the initial publication. Comparing giants. Titanoboa holds the record as the largest snake ever discovered, but it exists within a broader context of gigantic reptiles that have inhabited Earth throughout history. Comparing Titanoboa to other prehistoric and modern giants reveals patterns in evolution, ecology, and the physical limits of animal size. These comparisons also highlight what made Titanoboa unique among the world's largest predators. The most obvious comparison is with modern snakes. The green anaconda currently holds the title of heaviest living snake, with exceptional individuals reaching lengths of 5 to 6 meters and weights exceeding 100 kilograms. Reticulated pythons can grow slightly longer, up to 7 meters in rare cases, but are lighter bodied. Both species pale in comparison to Titanoboa, which was more than twice as long and roughly 10 times as heavy. The size difference is so dramatic that Titanoboa and modern constrictors barely seem to belong to the same family. Why did Titanoboa grow so much larger? Part of the answer lies in climate. Modern anacondas and pythons live in tropical regions, but even the hottest modern jungles are cooler than the Paleocene world Titanoboa inhabited. Lower temperatures constrain metabolic rates, limiting how large ectothermic animals can grow. Additionally, modern snakes face competition from mammalian predators that didn't exist in Titanoboa's time. This competition restricts the ecological niches available to snakes, preventing them from evolving toward extreme sizes. Another relevant comparison involves extinct giant snakes. Titanoboa wasn't the only enormous serpent in prehistory. During the Miocene epoch, around 15 million years ago, Australia was home to Wanambi, a python relative that reached lengths of 5 to 6 metres. While impressive, Wanambi was still less than half Titanoboa's size. Similarly, Giganthophis, a snake from the Eocene of North Africa, may have reached 10 metres, but fossil evidence is fragmentary, making precise estimates difficult. Even if Giganthophis approached Titanoboa's length, it almost certainly wasn't as heavy or as powerfully built. Comparing Titanoboa to other reptiles reveals additional insights. The largest crocodilians, both living and extinct, rival Titanoboa in size. Sarcosuchus, a Cretaceous crocodile from Africa, reached lengths of 11 to 12 metres, slightly shorter than Titanoboa, but comparable in mass. Deinosuchus, a late Cretaceous crocodilian from North America, may have been even larger, with some estimates placing it at over 10 metres long and weighing close to 5,000 kilograms. However, these giants lived tens of millions of years before Titanoboa in very different ecosystems. In terms of hunting strategy, Titanoboa's closest competitors were probably the crocodilians that shared its habitat. Cerejon crocodiles like Acherontosuchus reached impressive sizes and hunted similar prey. But crocodiles rely on ambush tactics and powerful bites, while Titanoboa used constriction. These different approaches allowed the two groups to coexist without direct competition, each exploiting slightly different prey types and hunting locations. Marine reptiles provide another point of comparison. Mosasaurs, the dominant marine predators of the late Cretaceous, grew to enormous sizes. Some species exceeded 15 metres in length, but mosasaurs were fully aquatic and used tail propulsion to swim, making them fundamentally different from Titanoboa. The snake was semi-aquatic, capable of moving on land and hunting in both terrestrial and aquatic environments. This versatility may have been one of Titanoboa's key advantages. Dinosaurs, of course, dwarf almost all other land animals. Sauropods like Argentinosaurus reached lengths of over 30 metres and weights exceeding 70 tonnes. Theropods like Tyrannosaurus rex, while much smaller, were still significantly larger than Titanoboa. However, these comparisons are somewhat unfair. Dinosaurs were endothermic or near endothermic, with metabolisms that allowed for faster growth and larger sizes. Titanoboa, as an ectotherm, operated under different physiological constraints. Among modern reptiles, Titanoboa's size is unparalleled. The largest living crocodilian, the saltwater crocodile, can reach 7 metres and 1,000 kilograms, roughly matching Titanoboa's weight, but falling short in length. Komodo dragons, the largest living lizards, reach only 3 metres and 90 kilograms. No modern reptile comes close to Titanoboa's combination of length, mass, and predatory capability. One interesting pattern emerges from these comparisons. Gigantism tends to occur during periods of environmental stability and abundant resources. Titanoboa evolved during a time of high temperatures, lush vegetation, and minimal competition. Similarly, the largest dinosaurs lived during the Jurassic and Cretaceous, when climates were warm and food was plentiful. When conditions change, cooling temperatures, increased competition, ecological disruptions, giant species tend to decline. This suggests that Titanoboa's size wasn't just a result of evolutionary innovation, but also a product of its environment. The snake evolved in a world tailor-made for gigantism, where every factor, temperature, prey availability, lack of competitors, aligned to favour massive size. Once those conditions disappeared, so did Titanoboa. The museum spectacle. Few fossil discoveries generate the level of public excitement that Titanoboa achieved. Part of this success can be attributed to the spectacular museum exhibits and reconstructions that brought the giant snake to life for audiences worldwide. These displays transform dry scientific data into visceral, awe-inspiring experiences, allowing people to confront the sheer scale of this prehistoric predator. The centerpiece of Titanoboa's public presence is the life-size model created by the Smithsonian Institution. Constructed at a cost of several $100,000, the model measures 13 meters from nose to tail and weighs close to 1 ton. Every detail was carefully crafted to match scientific specifications: the diameter of the body, the pattern of scales, the shape of the head. The result is a reconstruction so realistic that visitors often believe they're looking at a preserved specimen rather than a model. Creating the model required close collaboration between artists and scientists. Sculptors worked from detailed anatomical drawings provided by paleontologists, ensuring that every curve and contour matched the fossil evidence. The scales were individually applied, with patterns based on modern boats, but scaled up to match Titanoboa's size. The eyes were given a menacing, reptilian stare, carefully positioned to suggest the snake's predatory nature without veering into caricature. The model's pose was another critical decision. Should it be displayed coiled as if constricting prey? Stretched out to emphasize length? Swimming through water? After much deliberation, the designers chose a dynamic S-curve, suggesting movement without requiring the full space a stretched-out snake would demand. This pose allows visitors to walk alongside the entire length of the model, experiencing the snake's size from multiple angles. Lighting plays a crucial role in the exhibit's impact. Spotlights illuminate the model against a darkened background, creating dramatic shadows that emphasize the snake's bulk. Ambient sounds, jungle noises, water movements, distant animal calls immerse visitors in the Paleocene environment. Some exhibits include interactive displays where visitors can compare their size to Titanoboa's, standing next to life-size cross-sections of the snake's body. The model has toured extensively since its creation, appearing in museums across North America and Europe. Attendance numbers spike wherever it appears, with families, school groups, and curious adults flocking to see the giant serpent. For many visitors, especially children, the model represents their first encounter with paleontology beyond dinosaurs. This introduction can spark lifelong interests in science, making Titanoboa an important educational tool. Beyond the physical model, digital reconstructions have extended Titanoboa's reach. Documentaries feature computer-generated animations showing the snake hunting, swimming, and interacting with its environment. These animations incorporate the latest scientific findings, depicting Titanoboa's movements with accuracy, informed by biomechanical studies. The visual impact of seeing a 13-meter snake coiling around a crocodile is unforgettable, cementing Titanoboa's place in popular imagination. Museum exhibits also contextualize Titanoboa within broader paleontological narratives. Display panels explain the Paleocene epoch, the Sarajevo ecosystem, and the climatic conditions that allowed such gigantism. Visitors learn not just about the snake itself, but about the world it inhabited and the scientific methods used to study it. This educational component ensures that the exhibit serves as more than mere spectacle. It becomes a gateway to deeper understanding. The Titanoboa exhibit has also inspired artistic interpretations beyond scientific reconstruction. Painters, digital artists, and sculptors have created imaginative depictions of the snake, sometimes emphasizing its monstrous qualities, other times focusing on its role as a natural predator. These artworks appear in books, online galleries, and even as tattoos, demonstrating how deeply Titanoboa has penetrated cultural consciousness. Critics have occasionally questioned whether such dramatic presentations sensationalize science, turning serious research into entertainment. Supporters argue that engagement is crucial. If spectacular exhibits inspire people to learn about paleontology, climate science, and evolution, then the dramatization serves a valuable purpose. The balance between education and entertainment remains an ongoing discussion in museum design. One unexpected consequence of the exhibit's popularity has been increased support for paleontological research. Visitors who encounter Titanoboa often become advocates for funding fossil excavations and preserving important sites. Some even pursue careers in paleontology, inspired by their museum experience. In this way, Titanoboa's legacy extends beyond science and culture, potentially shaping the future of the field itself. Lessons from a lost world. Titanoboa's existence offers profound lessons about evolution, ecology, and the dynamic nature of Earth's climate. As scientists continue to study the fossils and refine their understanding of the Paleocene ecosystem, several key insights have emerged. Insights with implications that reach far beyond prehistoric snakes. First, Titanoboa demonstrates that Earth's climate has fluctuated dramatically over geological time. The Paleocene world was so different from our own that it seems almost alien. A hothouse planet where rainforests stretched to the poles and temperatures remained high year-round. This extreme warmth wasn't an anomaly. It persisted for millions of years, shaping ecosystems in fundamental ways. Understanding these past climate states helps scientists predict how modern climate change might alter Earth's environments. The snake's size also illustrates the profound connection between temperature and biology. For ectothermic animals, environmental heat directly influences growth, metabolism, and maximum size. In warmer worlds, reptiles gain advantages over mammals, potentially reclaiming ecological roles they lost after the dinosaur extinction. If current warming trends continue, some scientists speculate that reptiles could experience a resurgence, though probably not to Titanoboa's extremes. The ecosystems that supported such gigantism simply don't exist anymore. Another lesson involves the unpredictability of evolution. Titanoboa wasn't the product of some grand evolutionary plan. It emerged through opportunistic adaptation to specific conditions: high temperatures, abundant prey, minimal competition. When those conditions changed, the snake couldn't adapt quickly enough and went extinct. This underscores a fundamental truth. Evolution doesn't optimize for long-term success. It favors immediate survival, sometimes creating highly specialized organisms that flourish briefly but lack the flexibility to endure environmental shifts. The discovery also highlights the importance of preserving fossil sites. The Cerrejón mine could easily have destroyed Titanoboa's remains without anyone knowing. Only because alert students and cooperative mining companies allowed scientific access were the fossils recovered. How many other significant discoveries have been lost to industrial development? This question has spurred efforts to survey potential fossil sites before mining or construction begins, ensuring that important specimens are salvaged. Titanoboa's legacy extends into discussions about biodiversity and extinction. The snake was a top predator, a keystone species that shaped its entire ecosystem. Its disappearance would have triggered cascading effects, altering predator-prey dynamics and opening niches for new species. This mirrors modern concerns about biodiversity loss. When apex predators like tigers, sharks, or wolves disappear, ecosystems become unbalanced. Titanoboa's story serves as a reminder that even the most dominant species can vanish, and their loss reverberates through the entire food web. The fossil record itself teaches humility. Despite centuries of paleontological research, we're constantly surprised by new discoveries. Titanoboa was unknown until 2002, and many other extraordinary species surely remain hidden in unexcavated rock layers. Each new fossil rewrite parts of evolutionary history, forcing scientists to revise their understanding. This ongoing process of discovery and revision is one of science's great strengths. It's self-correcting, constantly refining knowledge as new evidence emerges. Climate science has particularly benefited from studying Titanoboa. The snake provides a calibration point for paleoclimate models, helping researchers understand how greenhouse gases, temperature, and biology interact. During the Paleocene, carbon dioxide levels were much higher than today, creating extreme warmth. By studying how ecosystems functioned under those conditions, scientists gain insights into what might happen if modern CO2 concentrations continue to rise. Titanoboa isn't just a curiosity, it's a data point in humanity's effort to understand climate dynamics. The study of Titanoboa also demonstrates the power of interdisciplinary collaboration. Paleontologists, climatologists, botanists, geologists, and biomechanics experts all contributed to understanding the snake and its world. No single discipline could have achieved this alone. The success of the Titanoboa project shows that complex scientific questions often require diverse expertise working together toward common goals. Finally, Titanoboa reminds us that Earth's history is filled with worlds we can barely imagine. The Paleocene jungle, with its giant snakes, oversized crocodiles, and lush vegetation, was a real place inhabited by real organisms. Yet it's as foreign to us as any science fiction landscape. This perspective is both humbling and inspiring. It challenges us to think beyond present circumstances, to recognize that the current state of Earth is temporary, just one frame in a much longer film. These lessons matter because they inform how we approach modern challenges. Climate change, habitat destruction, species extinction, these issues aren't unprecedented. Earth has experienced dramatic environmental shifts before, and life has responded with adaptation, migration, and extinction. By studying past responses to environmental change, we gain tools for predicting and potentially mitigating future impacts. Titanoboa, in this sense, is more than a fossil. It's a messenger from a lost world, carrying information crucial to understanding our own. The snake that changed science. Before Titanoboa emerged from the coal mines of Colombia, the scientific community operated under certain assumptions about the Paleocene epoch. The period was understood as a time of recovery, a transitional phase between the catastrophic end of the Cretaceous and the flourishing Eocene. Most researchers believed temperatures were only moderately warmer than today, perhaps a few degrees higher at most. Large reptiles were thought to have declined after the dinosaur extinction, with mammals quickly filling the vacant ecological roles. Titanoboa shattered these assumptions, forcing a fundamental reassessment of early Cenozoic life and rewriting textbooks across multiple scientific disciplines worldwide with unprecedented fossil evidence. The most immediate impact was on paleoclimatology. When researchers calculated the minimum temperature requirements for a snake of Titanoboa's size, the numbers were shocking. Existing climate models couldn't account for the sustained heat necessary to support such a massive ectotherm. This discrepancy triggered a wave of new research, with scientists revisiting temperature proxies from the Paleocene. Oxygen isotopes from marine sediments, fossilized soil structures, and plant distributions were all re-examined in light of Titanoboa's implications. The results confirmed what the snake's size suggested. The Paleocene was far hotter than previously believed. This finding had cascading effects across multiple disciplines. Geochemists revised their estimates of atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations, concluding that CO2 levels must have been significantly higher to produce such extreme warmth. Climate modelers adjusted their simulations of greenhouse gas effects, using the Paleocene as a test case for understanding how the planet responds to elevated carbon dioxide. The discovery also transformed paleontological methodology. Before Titanoboa, using animal size as a climate proxy was considered unreliable, Too many variables influence body size to make confident temperature estimates. But the relationship between ectotherm size and environmental temperature is so direct, so fundamental to reptilian physiology, that it provided a robust calibration tool. Now, paleontologists routinely use the body size of ancient reptiles and amphibians as one line of evidence for reconstructing past climates. Titanoboa's impact extended into evolutionary biology as well. The snake demonstrated that reptiles weren't simply declining after the dinosaur extinction. They were experimenting, adapting, and in some cases, thriving. This challenged the narrative of inevitable mammalian dominance, showing that reptiles had genuine opportunities to reclaim apex predator roles in post-Cretaceous ecosystems. The fact that mammals eventually won out wasn't predetermined destiny, but rather the outcome of specific environmental changes that favoured endothermic metabolism. The discovery sparked renewed interest in the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, a brief period of extreme warming that occurred around 56 million years ago. If the already hot Paleocene could support animals like Titanoboa, what happened during the PETM when temperatures spiked even higher? Researchers began searching for evidence of even larger ectotherms from that period, though none matching Titanoboa's size have been found. This suggests that there are upper limits to ectothermic gigantism, possibly related to cardiovascular constraints or oxygen availability. The snake also influenced how scientists think about ecological niches and competitive displacement. Why did giant reptiles dominate the Paleocene but decline thereafter? The answer lies partly in thermoregulation. As global temperatures cooled entering the Eocene, mammals gained a decisive advantage. Their ability to generate internal heat allowed them to remain active during cooler periods, hunt at night, and maintain consistent energy levels regardless of external conditions. Reptiles dependent on environmental warmth became increasingly constrained to tropical regions and less competitive in seasonal climates. Titanoboa's anatomy contributed to biomechanical research as well. Engineers and biologists collaborated to model how such a massive constrictor could function. The forces generated during constriction, the structural requirements of the skeleton, the cardiovascular demands of circulating blood through a 13-metre body. All of these became subjects of detailed study. These investigations revealed that Titanoboa was operating near the theoretical maximum for constrictor size, constrained by the physical limits of bone strength and heart capacity. The fossil also raised questions about snake evolution more broadly. The transition from lizards to snakes remains one of the more mysterious chapters in reptile evolution. Titanoboa's existence during the Paleocene confirmed that snakes had already diversified significantly by 60 million years ago, suggesting their origin must have been earlier, probably during the Cretaceous. This has prompted searches for earlier snake fossils, leading to discoveries of primitive snakes with residual leg bones and other transitional features. Public engagement with science also shifted because of Titanoboa. The snake became one of the few paleontological discoveries to achieve mainstream recognition comparable to famous dinosaurs. Media coverage was extensive and generally accurate, avoiding the sensationalism that sometimes plagues science journalism. The dramatic visual impact, a snake longer than a bus, captured imaginations without requiring exaggeration. This success demonstrated that compelling science communication could maintain accuracy while still exciting public interest. Educational curricula incorporated Titanoboa as a teaching tool. The snake provides a perfect case study for multiple scientific concepts: evolution, ecology, climate science, fossil formation, comparative anatomy, and scientific methodology. Teachers use Titanoboa to explain how scientists reconstruct ancient environments, make inferences from incomplete data, and revise understanding as new evidence emerges. The snake has appeared in textbooks, online courses and educational videos, reaching millions of students worldwide. The discovery also affected funding priorities in paleontology. Success stories attract resources, and Titanoboa's high profile made it easier for researchers to secure grants for tropical fossil exploration. The Cerrejón site received continued support, leading to additional discoveries of other Paleocene species. More broadly, funding agencies recognize the value of paleontological research for understanding climate change, viewing fossils not just as curiosities, but as crucial data for predicting Earth's future. Titanoboa influenced conservation discussions as well. The snake lived in rainforest ecosystems not unlike those threatened by modern deforestation. Its extinction, driven partly by climate change and ecosystem disruption, serves as a warning about biodiversity loss. Conservation advocates have used Titanoboa's story to illustrate how environmental changes can eliminate even dominant species, arguing that current biodiversity deserves protection because its loss would be equally permanent. The snake has also appeared in philosophical discussions about deep time and human perspective. 60 million years is an almost incomprehensible span. Modern humans have existed for only a fraction of that duration. Yet Titanoboa's fossilized bones connect us directly to that ancient world, making deep time tangible. This perspective can be humbling, reminding us that human civilization is extraordinarily recent and potentially fleeting in geological terms. Finally, Titanoboa changed how paleontologists approach fieldwork in industrial settings. The cooperation between scientists and the Cerrejón mining company established a model for salvage paleontology, systematic fossil recovery from sites slated for development. This approach has been replicated elsewhere, with mining and construction companies increasingly recognizing the scientific value of fossils and allowing access to researchers. Without such cooperation, countless important specimens would be destroyed, unexamined, and lost forever. The ripple effects of Titanoboa's discovery continue to propagate through science. Each year brings new research building on the initial findings, whether studying related fossils from other sites, refining climate models, or developing new analytical techniques. The snake that once terrorized Paleocene rivers now inspires scientists across multiple disciplines, proving that major discoveries can reshape entire fields of study.